I'm going to start off by saying something that could be a bit controversial. I think Pomodoro sucks and I might have a better alternative to it, and that's what we'll be discussing in this video. Hey there, lovely person watching YouTube. If you're new here, hi, my name is Ajay. I'm an Indian doctor in the UK. If you're already subscribed, welcome back. I love you to the stars and back. So if you absolutely hate studying or working, like in my case, if I have to sit and code, that is something that I don't think I'll ever enjoy, Pomodoro is probably a good idea. But if you can bear studying or working, or you may be okay with doing it, or sometimes if you like doing it, Pomodoro is not a great idea. I'll explain why, but let me start with my experience with Pomodoro. So when I learned about the Pomodoro technique back in med school, when all of these productivity YouTubers were singing high praises about it, so I tried to inculcate that into my study routine, and very soon I started noticing, that I had stopped enjoying studying, that I started seeing it more as a chore or a task that I had to do. Basically, I did not have any fun studying with the Pomodoro technique. This was a bit crazy because you watch any productivity YouTuber and their favorite Italian word is Pomodoro. Some even think that it is the key to eternal life. So when I heard all of these smart, high-achieving people, sing praises for Pomodoro and it wasn't working for me, it was kind of natural for me to think that there was something wrong with me. Maybe I'm broken or something. So I started thinking about this and I started looking more into it. And I realized that Pomodoro doesn't work for me because the whole system is a bit flawed in a certain way, because it misses out on one key aspect of how human brains work. But before we discuss that, let's see what Pomodoro technique is, how it works and all that. And if you're very familiar with Pomodoro, feel free to skip this section. So Pomodoro technique was first described by this guy, Francesco Cirillo, who, while in college in Italy, used a tomato-shaped timer. That is apparently a very common household object in Italy. And because he used a tomato-shaped timer to time his study sessions for his technique, he called it the Pomodoro technique, or literally the tomato technique in Italian. So his idea, as published in his book The Pomodoro Technique, is to first break down a big chunk of work into small chunks of 25 minutes, which is a great idea, and it is something that everyone should do. Probably not 25 minutes, but of course when you have a big chunk of work, break it into smaller manageable chunks of work, which makes it just easier to start working on it and to plan things, right? So coming back to the technique, you have these 25-minute chunks of work or studying. So you study your work for 25 minutes with utmost concentration, and after that you take a 5 minutes break where you just relax, stretch, have a cup of coffee, water, whatever that relaxes you. And then you do another session, and then another, and then another. And after 4 such sessions, you take a longer break for like half an hour. On theory, it sounds really, really great, right? Pomodoro is indeed great for doing things that you absolutely hate. For example, like it could be like filing taxes, or in my case, if I have to sit and code, that is something that I really dread and something that I really hate doing. So in such situations, just telling yourself that you only have to do something for 25 minutes is much more likely to make you want to be okay with doing it. And when you do one such session, you feel like, maybe I can do another, and then you're like, maybe I can do another, and then you're like, maybe I can do another. So basically you keep doing that when it's a thing that you absolutely hate doing, and this is sort of a way to motivate yourself to do it. So that's great, right? Then why do I think it's bad? Because in an ideal world, if humans were wired and built the way computers are, this would be an absolute beast of a studying/work strategy. Because you're using up your brain space, your neurotransmitters and all that, what I like to call brain juice, in your 25 minutes of working, and then you take a 5 minutes break. So you recover all the brain juice back again, which you can use for another 25 minutes, and then you recover it all again. This sounds great, yeah? But unfortunately, that's not how really human brains work. Our brains love being in the flow state. If you don't know what flow state is, so it is a state as described by this guy. I don't know how to pronounce his name, so I'm not gonna try. So as pronounced by Mihaly whatever, it's basically defined as flow is the mental state in which a person performing some activity is fully immersed in a feeling of energized focus, full involvement, and enjoyment in the process of the activity. Or in simple words, you can just call it being in the zone. So every time an artist is lost in his painting, like he's painting, he doesn't realize how much time has passed. Or you might have experienced that you find yourself lost in a book, that you're reading a book and you don't notice hours have passed and you just feel so focused, so energized to continue reading it. Or a runner who loses track of distance and time when he is experiencing the runner's high. They're all examples of being in the flow state or like being in the zone. That's why they find these activities so pleasurable. Our brains are in a way very simplistic when it comes to, hating or loving tasks. Any task that gives the brain pleasure, it starts to like it. And any task that causes, pain or discomfort, the brain, learns to hate it. This is why bookworms love to read a book or even to just go to a bookstore. This is why people do crafts. This is why people do, paint stuff and all that. Because all of this gets them in the zone and helps them relax when they're stressed. And they all love doing these tasks because subconsciously we are trying to find ways to attain flow state, and whatever lets us get in the zone, get in the flow states, our brain starts to like it and we, find it relaxing and start liking it. Now, taking a step back and looking at the way Pomodoro is structured and how it works, you can obviously see that there's no way you can enter flow state like in 25 minutes if you're on a very short interval like that. And therefore, right off the bat, you are taking out the biggest incentive you can give your brain to, make it, start liking this activity. Now let's just say you have other ways of entering into the flow state during the day and you don't care much for studying being the way you enter flow. Although I really think studying could be a great way to, get into flow, but I certainly understand if it's not your cup of tea. But even for just studying for the sake of studying and to get it done, Pomodoro is not a very great idea because first it takes some time for your brain to actually start understanding what you're studying and actually start to assimilate all the data that you're putting. This takes your brain, like for some people it takes 5 minutes, for some people it takes 10 minutes, for some people it takes 15 minutes. So it's basically like a warm up for your brain. So maybe in 15 minutes you're all warmed up and you're studying comfortably and you study comfortably for another 10 minutes and then bam, the Pomodoro timer goes off. And now you have to take a break. This is not great because when you come back to study, you will sort of have to go through that initial period of warming up again. It is certainly much shorter than the first time around, but it certainly will be there. And this whole, kind of starting from the scratch again and again could be a bit frustrating. And secondly, there's no set timer in your brain that says you need a break after like 25 minutes or after 50 minutes or whatever it is. We have to rest when we need it, when our brain says it needs rest, not when the clock says it's time to rest. Life would be very easy if our brains were mechanical like that, but they're not. If you're doing some light studying, you definitely don't need a break every 25 minutes. And if you're doing something really intense, maybe you need a break every 10 minutes. And when following the Pomodoro technique, it's very hard to say, I really need a break right now, I'm tired, but the clock says I have 10 more minutes to study. So let's actually, try and study for 10 more minutes, which is not great because not only are you not going to retain much of what you studied that way, you're sort of gonna have a mini micro burnout because you're forcing your brain to study when it doesn't want to. And if you punish your brain, it always hits back harder. And on the whole, not allowing your brain to enter flow state and also making it work when it's actually, in need of rest makes the brain think of work as a chore or something that it's not enjoyable, something that's a hard task that you have to just go through. So you're taking out the incentive to make your brain actually, start liking studying. So now that we've established that Pomodoro is not a great way to go ahead with, we obviously need a system that can make, studying enjoyable and also keep us accountable. So ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, I present to you the concept of Flowtime. I absolutely love Flowtime because the idea is to allow your brain to be the guide of your sessions, giving your brain as many chances as you can to allow it to, go into flow state, and also just giving it enough rest for it to recover and come back and start studying again. And the best part is that it becomes better and better with time the more often you do it. So what is Flowtime and how do you get into your study routine? Glad you asked that because I'm all very excited to tell you about it. So the most basic principle of Flowtime is unitasking, which means that you're going to pick one thing and you're going to do only one thing at a time. Say record Pomodoro video. That's the task I'm doing right now. So let's say I started this at, now it's 1:46. Let's say I started this at 1 p.m. So that's the start time. So I'm just gonna do only this and not do anything else. If I'm studying, I'm just gonna put study session 1, put on the start timer, and I'm just gonna study. If there are any interruptions, like say I finish this video shooting at 2 p.m. So I'm gonna say end time is 2 p.m. and whether any interruptions, did you get a call, did you speak to a friend, something happened, like interruptions, anything that takes less than 5 minutes. So add that. Let's say I had 2 interruptions, so I had add it as 2, and then you just mention how much the work time was. So I started at 1, finished at 2, so my work time is 1 hour, just to give you an idea of how much time you spent on it. And then after this, if I take like 15 minutes break and next to the next task, so I'm just gonna add 15 minutes of break time, and next task would be like edit Pomodoro video, and I say I start at 2:15 p.m. and say I work till 4 p.m. and I had say 1 interruption and I worked for like close to 2 hours, 1 hour 45 minutes or whatever. So I add that here, and then let's say I take a 30-minute break, I add this here. So the whole point of adding all these tasks, start time, stop time, whatever, is to get an idea of how the trend works. For example, by doing this, I realized that when I study or /work or write scripts in the morning, like first thing in the morning, it's much easier for me to start working on it, and I actually start work much more longer on it, and interruptions are lesser because not many of my friends would be calling me up in the morning. And yeah, on the whole, work hour will be much more, and I don't need to take frequent breaks, so my sessions are longer and all that. And again, like I said, the whole idea of Flowtime is to let your brain be the guide, so you're not forcing your brain to work when it's tired or needs a break. So like say I start at 1 p.m. and at 2 p.m. I start feeling like I need some rest or the task gets over. So that's when I take a break. If I don't feel like taking a break, I don't take the break. If I feel like taking a break at like 1:30, I would go ahead and take the break, and I would do that as record Pomodoro video session 1, and then I take a break for 15 minutes, then I'd come back, and at 2:15, I would make it as record Pomodoro video session 2, and then I would record till 4 p.m. or however long my brain allows me to do it. So the whole idea is you're not pushing your brain to work too much. You're keeping yourself accountable because you see how much time you actually spent working /studying and how much time you took for break and all that. And obviously just do this only for the work tasks that you do throughout your working day, and obviously you don't have to do this for every single thing, like watching a movie or whatever. You don't need to have a data of all of that. Only things that need you to concentrate and work on, studying, working and all that. So if you have a journal like this, basically like I said, you tend to figure out which time of the day works better for each task. For example, for me, shooting video works best when I do it after 11 a.m. because till 11 a.m. I would prefer, studying or, writing a script or something like that. So you start seeing these trends where you're most efficient, where you take less breaks, where you less chance of yourself getting interrupted. So the more days you do this, you'll start seeing these trends, and you can strengthen whatever timings works really well. And if something doesn't work in a certain time of the day, you can probably plan to shift it to another part of the day. So this is sort of something that I've always relied on, but I didn't really make detailed tables and put it on Notion or something. I would just write it down in my notes. But I think at least from now on, I have to take it a bit more seriously to make it a bit more effective for my studying. And I highly suggest you make this table. It just takes 5 minutes, but it adds so much value to your work study sessions. So I think everyone should give Flowtime a chance. It's a wonderful system that allows your brain to get into flow and also take breaks whenever required. And the best part is that it gets better and better the more often you do it. But hey, if Pomodoro works really well for you, sure, go ahead, use that. At the end of the day, make sure the system or the tool works for you and you are not working for the system or the tool. But I think everyone should give Flowtime a chance, and this is just my opinion. Feel free to try it, and if you like it, continue it or drop it. And with that, I think I've made my case. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Stay happy. Take care. Bye-bye.